Yo, we are live, and we're going to do our obligatory check to make sure that the page has the right live video on it. So in theory, haha, that's me talking just now. So it looks like we're in business. What's up, y'all? This is Morning Coffee number 29. It's Tuesday, which means it's Tuesday. Say hi, Sue.
Hello.
They can't see you, but they can hear you. And also the bear is hanging out down here. I am late, as has become the norm, so we're going to be setting this up as we go. But yeah, so yesterday we talked a little bit about friction, right? About how that time when I came back, between when I left Infusion the first time and then I came back for the first time, there was just a lot of random stuff that was going on at the time that just created this sort of unnecessary friction and made it really, really difficult. And it's funny because that's, I mentioned this yesterday, but that's been a sort of a recurring theme, is just letting friction sort of take over, and you just, I don't know, it makes it very hard for you to move forward. I mean, think about it. It's a pretty good analogy, right? Friction is what slows things down. Like if there was no friction, you wouldn't need to put gas in your car. You just need to push it, and then it would just go forever. But friction slows it down. In some instances, I think friction can be a good thing. But I think from that emotional standpoint, when it comes to gaining the momentum that you need to be able to move forward and like do the things that you want in life and in business, it's just a lot. Friction just makes it hard, right? So we overcame that friction though at that time and managed to get back out there. And not that it was smooth sailing from there. It was just, at least I got back to Ukraine and was able to finish out my time. So I didn't have that. It was really, like looking back, it was really good that I did, because I don't know that I ever, speaking of that same friction conversation, I don't know that I ever would have been able to get over the internal sort of, I don't know the right word for it, but shame is essentially what it would have been, of not having finished, right? I think for the rest of my life, I would have always been sort of trying to make up for that instead of having done it, which is what I did. So that worked out pretty well. But I do think that in a lot of instances that leaving and then coming back, actually, it sort of solidified a lot of the stuff that I was trying to do. It made me sort of more resolute in a lot of the things that I wanted to do, a lot of the thoughts that I had. But one thing that happened after I went back is I realized, this is very dangerous. Can you call? Wick's a dangerous little boy. He likes to toe the line. Anyway, one thing that happened is that at that time, because of all this stuff that I'd been through, and because I was thinking about life a little bit more seriously as you can as a 20-year-old, but as I was starting to really consider the future and really consider what it was that I was going to try and do while I was there in Ukraine, I mean, a lot of stuff happened. I could literally write a book. In fact, maybe I should. I'll write a book or something, to really dive into some of the stuff that happened there and some of the lessons that I learned. Man, it was insane. But one of the big things that happened is that I got into this mental space where I decided that some of my dreams, some of the things that I had wanted to do my whole life, weren't wise. When going to high school, I mean, when I was a kid, I always had this romantic notion that I was going to be a lawyer like my dad, and he always tried to put the kibosh on that. He always wanted to be like, no, you shouldn't do that. That's not a good idea. I think mostly just because I think that's the duty of a father, is to say, don't do the things that I did, because I went through a lot of pain. But I wanted to be an attorney, but I never really like dug into it that deep. And then all through high school, I got really into music and decided that I wanted to take a different path, which was music and music education. And I had, by the time my senior year rolled around, I actually had the path pretty much lined out. I knew exactly where I wanted to go. I knew who I wanted to work with. I kind of had a spot waiting for me at the undergrad university that I was looking at Northern Arizona University. I didn't even really need to audition, but they made me do it as a formality. But then I didn't tell them. Anyway, long story short, it did, I like, it was set. I was ready to go. Like, it was going to happen. And while I was out there in Ukraine, it became apparent to me. You know what else just became apparent to me? Turn the light on. We're doing all this. This is how this stuff works, man. This is show business, people. Real time. Real time. I started to realize that, that probably wasn't the best approach. And it just put doubt, I think, in my head as to what I really wanted to do. And it all came from this place of, so I let somebody or myself or at some point convince me that there was no money in it. This is the problem. That was the extent of the conversation in my head. There's no money in music, period. Which is false on so many levels, by the way. And it's not like there's money in law either. Yeah, I mean, if you become a partner in a big firm, you can make a good amount of money. But for the most part, if you're a lawyer or if you have your own firm, whatever you're doing, you're making not much more than a music teacher would at a good school, right? And not to toot my own horn here, but I was really good. I would have been really good. I still am really good. I'm out of practice. Anywho, so I let it get into my head that was not, that wasn't what I wanted to do, and I used to tell people that I used to tell them that I had repented of my desire to go and be a music teacher, as though that was the wrong thing to do, and the right thing to do was to choose something noble like law. And, that set me on a path that sort of stuck me in a mental state where I thought that I was constantly trying to make up for lost time. So all this time I've been spending, and this is a really funny thing, is at the end of the day, the only reason why I went to college was because I wanted to go to law school. And I wanted to go to law school so that I could make money. And at the end of the day, I'm not using any of what I did in college. Beyond like being able, I'm a pretty good writer. Beyond that, I mean, I do appreciate what I learned in college for that, but that was philosophy. That had nothing to, I didn't do any of the standard pre-law undergrad stuff, I did some logic stuff and that kind of thing, but I never didn't take like political science or any of that kind of stuff, because it was all philosophy and writing and thinking deeply and stuff. And then Russian. In Russian, I loved the program and I loved the people I met and what I was able to do, but I already spoke Russian. So, and now I do exactly what I was doing before I went to college, which is I help Infusionsoft customers. And so all that energy that I expended convincing myself that law was a better choice was wasted. And I don't know, looking back, I mean, I have a hard time believing that I could have ended up even close to the situation that I'm in now if I hadn't walked exactly the path that I did. So I have a hard time like regretting anything that I have done. But just looking back, you can't help but wonder if net for some of those like situations, if I would have been able to do more of what I had originally wanted to do. Or, maybe I would have gone into it and tried it out and realized I didn't want to do that either. And I would have ended up doing what I'm doing anyway. So like, I mean, you don't know. You can't know. There's way too much math involved to figure out what might have happened had you gone a certain route. But I think the important thing is, at the time, it seemed like there was no other viable good choice. I had let myself be convinced that there was only one path, there was only one correct path, and there was only one thing to do, and that was do law, go to college, do law, and give up a bunch of things. And like, there were some, I'll put it this way: so after I came back from Ukraine, I went back to Infusionsoft again, and this is where I'm kind of jumping ahead in the story to tell you this part of it, but I'm gonna go into, there's some funny stuff that happened when I came back to Infusionsoft the second time that I want to talk about tomorrow. But had I not left Infusionsoft when I did, had I stayed, I think back So this was beginning of 2008 when I came back. And I started working there again, like, it was like December 2007, January 2008. And I just think back, first of all, had I stayed, I would be financially in a much different position. Well, at least at one point of my life, I would have been in a different financial position because all my stock options would have vested, which I won't go too deep into the specifics of it, but we got a lot of stock options in the early days, and then they did a 7-way split, so that stock became much, much more stock. And when the last buyback that they did, when I think it was the Goldman Sachs investment, or maybe it was the next one after that, I don't remember. It would have been a large chunk of change, let's put it that way. I could have sold back a lot of stock for quite a lot of money, or just wrote it out and been in a much better position anyway. But not only that, being there as part of the mothership as we call it, for that long, I can't imagine having the ability to meet some of the people that I've met now, after, like, years and years later, having met them then or worked with them more closely then in the larger corporate environment, being able to work in a larger corporate environment, watch a company go from nothing, essentially, from like 4 people up to 150, and be involved heavily in the whole process, and then start to, learn the politics of moving up in the ranks. And I don't know, I could have ended up in a management position somewhere or whatever, making good money, having great stock, and just being in a different situation altogether. But again, I got it stuck in my head that law was what I needed to do. I needed to go get an education, do all these things. And I don't regret it. It's just, at the time, it seemed as though there was no other choice. And it seemed very obvious. And looking back, I realized that just because something seems very obvious doesn't mean that it's true. And just because you can't see another way doesn't mean there isn't one. And sometimes the path that's sitting right in front of you can seem like it's not the one to take because it's sitting right in front of you, and yet it's right there. Like, I had a path that I could have taken, and I could have gone back and done the music route. Again, I still had that spot waiting. I didn't even explore that as an option. I didn't even allow myself to test it, to see one way or the other. And so I think the main point there is you can't just let yourself get convinced of tiny little notions that then take over your whole world. Not because it can't lead to something good, because you can make positive things out of wherever you end up. I mean, I'm in a great place now, It's not like I said, I've said it 100 times. Maybe I'm trying to convince myself is how much I'm saying it. But no, I'm like legitimately happy in a way that I've never been in my entire life. And I'm not just saying that because Sue's right there.
Yet you're wearing black.
I'm wearing black in contrast with what I wear contrasts with my ever pale skin. So you can see how positive and vibrant my face actually is.
You need to wear black so people can see you in front of the covers.
Yep, that's the reason. But looking back, I just realized that it was not the only choice. And it probably wasn't even the wise choice. And, all things considered, all other things being equal, if I could end up in this place, regardless of what choice I'd made back then, I would go back and I would choose not to do law. Period. I would do the music route. Right? Because that's what I had wanted to do at the time. And now I still have that itch. I'm happy with doing what I'm doing for the most part. Most days I'm pretty excited about it. There are some days that are kind of depressing, which I'm sure you can understand. But I still get that itch. What could have been if I had gone that route? What could I have done? And I'm sure you have. I know I'm only 33. What am I? 32. I'm only 32 years old. So it's not like I've experienced everything and I have all the regrets. You know what I mean? It's just I still have that itch, and I realize that the decision that I made was based on somebody else's determination, not based on mine. And more importantly than that, because I think that's pretty obvious that you can't make decisions based on what somebody else says. You got to make it based on yourself. I think more important than that and more subtle than that is you can't, in a situation where it seems obvious and no other path seems like it's even going to work, you have to still consider all options. Because what you are capable physically as a human of comprehending and understanding is much smaller than what's actually happening. The math is too big, right? The formula is way too big. The calculation is way too big for you to really comprehend all of the variables. And that, ironically enough, it actually goes both ways. Both in a don't make decisions because you could regret it. Also, don't make decisions banking on them being absolutely the best thing for you, because most likely there's about 1 trillion things you're not considering. Ask me how I know that. Anyway, I'm excited just about, there's a lot of stuff that's happened the last few days, and I talked about it yesterday, but the feeling on top of what you're doing is probably one of the more important things to be focused on. Not even just being on top, but just feeling good about it, and giving yourself all the ability to do that is huge. And so, anyway, that's all I got for today. For myself and for Sue and the bear, it's Tuesday, which is Sue's Day. Peace out.